Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. And I do want to get to the latest out of the Middle East here at 2:07 on the East Coast and 11:07 on the West Coast. Take a look. New video released by the Iran-backed Hezbollah terror group in Lebanon shows what it describes as an underground city of terror tunnels. The footage, more than 4 minutes in length, was posted by the official X page for the State of Israel. And it's the latest in a series of videos that Hezbollah has released flaunting its purported military capabilities as it does trade fire with the Israeli military. A lot of developments to discuss out of the Middle East, so I do want to bring in a friend of the show here, Enia Krivine, the Senior Director of the Israel Program and Senior Director of the National Security Network at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. As always, Enia, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, so we have to talk first about that video that, again, was released by the Hezbollah terror group. To see that, what goes through your mind as you're looking at those tunnels, several of which are very large? You're seeing trucks driving right through them.
Yeah, so when I look at that video, I think, first of all, I wonder how real it is. I mean, one has to ask oneself these questions these days when we see these videos circulating. So that's my first question. But it wouldn't surprise me if it was real, because we've known that Hezbollah has been digging underground for almost a decade, and they were terror tunnels that were dug into Israel through that hard rock in that region that were discovered in 2018. There were 5 terror tunnels that Hezbollah had almost made it all the way through into Israeli territory. So we know they've been putting resources into digging in the mountains, and we know this has been a national project for the terror organization that has a big role in government and Lebanese society. But the main thing that I think about when I look at that is how those resources could have contributed to Lebanon. How, if those resources were in the hands of an accountable, normal governmental organization, they could have built houses and hospital and infrastructures and schools. And instead they went to building this underground fortress, it looks like, which, by the way, is exactly what Hamas did in Gaza. And today, Josh, I don't know if you saw this, but there were reports that Lebanon had a countrywide electricity outage. And this is why, when you look at the kind of investment that Hezbollah has put into these terrorist activities, you can begin to understand how deep the rock goes in their economy.
What do you think Hezbollah's motivation, and I know it's hard to get into the mind of a terror organization, but what do you think that Hezbollah's motivation is here by releasing this video and the others that are showing these tunnels? Again, as you mentioned, not clear if they are real videos, but again, what is the motivation there?
So Israel and Hezbollah are in a very tense moment. As you know, Israel took out a top Hezbollah commander late last month, and they have both Hezbollah and Israel have basically been baring their teeth at each other for the past 2 weeks, trying to create a deterrence, both sides. So Israel has been flying low over Beirut, causing sonic booms, trying to send the message that the same one essentially that President Biden sent last year, which is don't. And Hezbollah has been taking shots at Israel's northern communities more and more bravely, and with more and more sort of risk-taking on their part. And it's been a slow and steady escalation, with both sides trying to make the other step back from the brink, essentially a game of chicken. But as you know, now Hezbollah is tying its willingness to go into a ceasefire with Israel to the condition that Israel first reaches a ceasefire with Gaza, which is why there is so much riding on this current deal that's on the table as talks are ongoing in Doha.
And speaking of that, I do want to pop up this live image that we do have. This is showing the Israel-Gaza border right there, as Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State in the U.S., is now over in the Middle East. He's going to meet with Netanyahu tomorrow. And this comes as President Biden has essentially said that he believes a ceasefire deal can be reached between the two sides, Israel and Hamas, by the end of this coming week. What do you think about that? Does that seem as though it is a real possibility?
So Josh, the Americans have been messaging very optimistically on this, and I actually heard some pretty optimistic reports from Israeli sources today too. And it sounds like what they're talking about is the multi-phase deal, which with problems at each phase. But I can tell you what Israelis are most focused on, and that is the hostages. So the first phase of the deal is supposed to result in the Israeli demand of 30 hostages to come home alive. And Hamas has responded that Israel will get 30 hostages, but they won't all be alive. And that is going to be a huge sticking point for Israel, because Israelis understand that the best chance of getting those hostages back is in the first phase of the deal, and that as the deal progresses, it gets more and more complicated as we get into the nuts and bolts of what a potential ceasefire could actually look like militarily. So I've seen very worrying reports that only as many as 50 hostages, 50, remain alive. So Israel is going to be working really hard to get as many home alive as they can in that first phase. And if Hamas is not willing to be reasonable on this and to send these women, children, and elderly home, this is the first category that's being discussed in the first swap, then I don't think Israel is going to be flexible on the rest of the terms, understandably, and that could affect the ability to get to a deal. Will Hamas send these people home alive?
Right now, we know that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, as I mentioned, is heading over to the Middle East, meeting with Netanyahu on Monday. We know that folks in Israel right now are bracing for this possible imminent attack from Iran. My question for you here, would Iran dare to attack Israel knowing that a high-ranking official from the U.S. is there?
So Iran has been attacking Israel, as you know, for 10 months on 7 fronts. And there was an attack today where a terrorist from the West Bank came and killed a man, an Israeli man, with a hammer and took his weapon. So these attacks are daily, and they're all part of the Iranian axis. If you're asking me if Iran would be bold enough to strike Israel directly from Iranian soil while Blinken is in the country, I think the short answer is no, because they can't take that risk. Look, Iran doesn't want to get into an all-out conventional war with Israel because it can't win it. And way much more so the US. Iran is a brittle regime. They're deeply unpopular. Their economy is in the dumps. They can't win on conventional terms. So instead, what they've done is they've built this terror empire that surrounds Israel, this ring of fire, and they're able to attack Israel on 7 fronts with pretty much plausible deniability, between the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, Hezbollah and Lebanon, the West Bank and Gaza, the Houthis. Iran is able to attack Israel with death by 1,000 cuts without ever really taking heat. So the idea that they would have a frontal assault like this while Blinken was in the country seems far-fetched to me, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, we will definitely see. And the whole basis of the imminent attack from Iran is all kind of centered around the situation that played out several weeks ago with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas there. Now, we know that Israel did take accountability and responsibility, so to speak, for the death of the second in command over at Hezbollah. But as far as Ismail Haniyeh, Israel has not claimed responsibility. They have not come out and said, we are responsible for this. So if they did conduct the attack that killed the Hamas leader, why wouldn't they want to come forward and say, yes, it was us?
So the attack in Beirut that you mentioned that took out the number 2 of Hezbollah, that was in response for a Hezbollah rocket that killed 12 children on a soccer field. And I think that particular targeted assassination in Beirut was in direct response to this slaughter of children, and it was sending a very specific message that Israel did want its fingerprints on. So it did take responsibility for that. Now, the event in Iran, if it was Israel, this is how I would analyze it. Look, you've got the number 2 of Hamas. He's been on Israel's top wanted list since the events of October 7th. Israel promised to the world that the top 5 of Hamas would not be safe anywhere, that they would pursue them in foreign capitals. And Israel managed to take out Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran with a pretty clean shot with very little collateral damage. And again, this was not an Iranian. This is a Palestinian who was a guest in Tehran. So it was humiliating, but it still gave Iran enough of a ladder to climb down from and enough ability to walk back from, which frankly we've seen with pressure from the U.S. So I think that in the language of warfare, what Israel, by not taking responsibility, was trying to signal it didn't want to escalate, and it wanted to give Iran the ability to walk back from it, which is what they did essentially.
You and I discussed this just a couple days ago, but the Palestinian Authority President Abbas has said that he wants to go travel over to Gaza. He has not been over there since, I believe, about 2007. So do you think that he is actually going to travel over to a war zone there in Gaza?
So I don't think much has changed, and I'll just reiterate what we covered on Friday. Abbas is barely safe to travel around the West Bank. There are places in the West Bank where he's persona non grata. Hamas is very active and very strong in the West Bank, despite Israel's efforts to dismantle Hamas in the West Bank, to dismantle their military capabilities. They remain a force to be reckoned with. And Abbas has very little ability to move around in the West Bank, which as you know, is about the size of Delaware. It's not a huge territory. But even with his incredible US-backed security forces, even with the joint security coordination with Israel, the US and Jordan, even with all of those tools, he can't even secure the West Bank. So if he does go to Gaza, Josh, I think he's going to have to go under heavy Israeli security protection, with his own security protection, and potentially with additional help from other organizations on the ground in Gaza that also have their own sort of protection. So it would be a gambit for him. I don't see that it's a risk that he would want to take willingly. But if the U.S. tells him that he has to go to try and assert some sort of PA presence there, or to send a signal that the PA has enough strength and capacity to play some role in some future agreement, like kind of being discussed, then maybe he will be forced to go.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how that does play out here. Enia Krivine, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us and break down the latest developments there in the Middle East. Obviously, a lot covered there, but anything you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Yeah, one thing I'll flag in just 15 seconds or less, Hamas fired a rocket today that came into Israel, and just last week they managed to fire a rocket that went off the coast near Tel Aviv. So it's just interesting to note that while Hamas has largely been decapitated in Gaza, they still maintain some fighting capacities, and they have far from surrendered, even though it looks like defeat is imminent, and they are just a shadow of what they were before October 7th. They are still trying to kill Israeli civilians. So it is of note that they are not giving up easy here.
No, that's definitely important to note. Thank you again for being here with us and breaking it all down. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
And Enia was talking a little bit about this, but I do want to bring you these details that are coming in from the Israel War Room, as they had initially posted there that a civilian security guard was in critical condition after being attacked by a Palestinian terrorist with a hammer. The terrorist stole the guard's gun and fled the scene. IDF forces launching a manhunt for that terrorist. Now, as Enia mentioned, we have now learned that that security guard, a civilian there, has passed away from their injuries. As we get more details on all of this, we will make sure to bring those to you right here on Live Now from Fox.